and good evening, everyone. It's a beautiful Sunday to meet all of you here, and to the fans of Manchester United, congratulations. As you know, today's meeting is a little bit different from what we've been doing before, because today's topic is on professional and career development, specifically how to impress your potential employer. And for today's webinar, we'll be tackling two major issues. And the two major issues will be one on career development and how to write a winning CV. And then the other major issue that we'll be tackling will be how to prepare for a job interview. And so I'd like to introduce the panel that we have before we go to the main agenda of the day. So with us, we have the Passcode team, which is going to introduce itself. And I'll begin by Humphrey. Humphrey, welcome, so that you can introduce Passcode and what Passcode does before we go to Jerusha, then Margaret, and then we'll have the Q&A session. Humphrey, if you're ready.
Okay. Thank you very much, Donald, for giving me this chance to say something about Passcode. First of all, I want to welcome everyone to this meeting, and also to thank you so much for honoring our invitation to come to the meeting. My name is Humphrey Nkonge, and I am one of the conveners of this meeting, representing Passcode Global Consultants. We are an organization that deals with capacity building for nurses who want to practice outside the country. So our organization is founded on the foundations of bridging the gap for jobs around the globe. We are looking at a world whereby, on one hand, there is an oversupply of human resources for health. That is mostly in the African continent and some parts of Asia. While on the other hand, there is a lot of demand for human resources for health, especially in the developed world. At the same time, bridging the gap is not easy because of the many preparations that are needed, especially in terms of getting registrations to those countries, and also doing exams and passing exams to be able to practice in those countries. So mostly what we do the part of bridging the gap, that is capacity building, by teaching people, first of all, giving people information, like the way we are doing here. We are just giving information for free, so that people can, first of all, be aware of these available opportunities. Then knowing that there are available opportunities, that's not the end of things. After that, one has to know what is needed for you to be able to get these opportunities that are available in developed countries. And after informing you about the opportunities, we go ahead to tell you how you can be able to exploit these opportunities. Now, the pathways of exploiting these opportunities are many. Some of them are a bit complex because of the rules that have been set up by these countries to ensure that they get the best people working in their systems. If I can give an example with a country like the US, for instance, and this is in specific to nursing, you will find that they are very strict with the kind of nurses they want to get, because they want to get very smart and very secure and safe nurses to handle their patients, because they value human life a lot. So what we do in the case of the US, for instance, we teach people about NCLEX. We do a self-sponsored program. We realize that most of the agencies do full sponsorship, whereby they bind you with a contract of about 3 years, you work for them. But we also noted that once you have done NCLEX, you can be able to negotiate a very good deal with employers in the US, and you get a very good pay without necessarily signing a very long contract. If I can give an example, if you compare Africa, for instance, with some countries in Asia, like the Philippines, the statistics we have right now for 2022 shows that Philippines alone, which is a country, like just one country in Africa, took over 50,000 nurses to the US in just 1 year, while the whole continent of Africa had less than 10,000 nurses going to the US in 2022. And one of the main things we were looking at is that nurses in the Philippines, for instance, the moment they get their registrations, they start preparing to go to the US, whether they have an agency or not. They start doing NCLEX by themselves. And by the time they are applying for the with agencies, they have already done IELTS, they have done NCLEX. So it becomes very easy for an agent to take a nurse from the Philippines to the US than taking a nurse from any other country where they have to sponsor that nurse. Another thing you need to realize is that when an agency is taking up a nurse, this agency is going to sponsor this nurse, and it is going to take some time. And again, they are not even sure whether this nurse is going to pass the NCLEX. So they have a very rigorous screening process. And this is a process that have left so many soldiers wounded. Some of the nurses have started the process. They have faced stumbling blocks in their way, and they have not been able to get what was needed for them, maybe in the IELTS, in NMC-CBT, or in the NCLEX, and you are just dropped down like that. So our organization came in to be able to walk the journey with the nurses who are willing, nurses who are capable, but nurses who are in one way or the other probably disadvantaged, or nurses who want to fasten their process of going abroad and practicing abroad. So we do have in our organization staff who take care of these things. We have people who concentrate on research about what is changing in the job market. They are able to explain to our customers what the market needs right now. And people who, for example, will be able to respond to things as they change. For instance, the recent change in the NCLEX, the new generation NCLEX, explaining what is needed and how people should prepare. And we have tutors who teach NCLEX at a small fee. And again, also coming to the IELTS exam, we have people who do so. So I will just give you a snapshot of our process for the US, because it's the major one that we are focusing on right now. If you want to go to the US as a nurse, we're able to provide for you all the services, including CGFNS registration and JSA registration. JSA is Joseph and Selney Associates, while CGFNS is Council for Foreign Graduate Nursing Schools. And what they do is that they verify your information, that is your license and academic certificates, to make sure that they are genuine. Then they give you a go-ahead to get something called authorization to test from the Board of Nursing. This Board of Nursing from the US is the one that will give you a license, so that once you go do your NCLEX and pass the exam, you get a license to go and practice in the US. And we have been doing this for some time. We have our nurses who have already gone to the US through our program. And once you pass NCLEX through our program, you are at free will to find an agency that you want to take you to the US. And again, if you request us to get you an agency, we get you an agency to take you to the US for free. And you negotiate. One, you negotiate your rate per hour, and two, you negotiate your contract, because we are working with direct agencies. We want nurses to go to the US in a manner in which they are not bound to a contract of 3 years, and with a low rate of payment per hour, because again, the cost of living is high. So we are looking at an empowered nurse. And you will agree with me that in the world we are living in today, the nursing profession has changed a lot. The nurses that were there before were nurses who could just respond to orders from physicians, orders from doctors, without questioning them. Today, a nurse is very independent in terms of the way they do their work at the professional level, and also in the way they carry out their life. So in our model of self-sponsored program, we are looking at something that will empower the nurses in terms of increasing your bargaining power. When you approach an agency and you have your documents in terms of the NCLEX ticked or checked as you have passed it, IELTS, you have it, you have passed it. Some people go to the extent of even doing visa screen by themselves. That agency is going to take you in very fast, and they are going to give you a very good deal. We have had instances where agencies are even willing to refund what you have used in the NCLEX process. Some of them are ready to double that amount because it means that they're not going to spend a lot of time waiting for you to pass the NCLEX. So that is what we do in Passcode. We are also focusing on other countries like the UK and New Zealand and the Republic of Ireland, whereby we are able to give you all the information on the process, how it goes, and what you're supposed to do to go there. And at the same time, we're able to teach you IELTS, both academic and also UKVI for those who may need it. And we are glad so far with the response. And maybe as I end, I will also talk about the recent information we are receiving from nurses from across Africa, number of countries like Ghana, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, concerning the zeal that we have seen in nurses. This is very encouraging, and I want to encourage everyone. This is a time to grab the opportunities, and it's very important for you to grab these opportunities and get a share of the world. So I will be there to answer questions as needed, and that's all I had for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Humphrey, for that introduction. Wow, it is always a pleasure to interact with Passcode. And for those ones who have not yet interacted with Passcode, I know Dennis will be putting up the contacts in the chat box, even as we go on. Meanwhile, I'd like to remind us that to always be on mute unless you are speaking or maybe asking a question for the sake of order. Now, as we all know, that your CV is your first impression towards to your potential employer, and your CV goes in to explain and introduce a lot about you even before meeting your employer. And so it is very prudent of us, or you as a nurse, to know how to package your resume in a manner that wants an employer to meet you and discuss with you about the potential role that you've applied to. And for that reason, we will have Jerusha, who will come to speak to us about career development and CV writing in about 15 minutes or so. And so just to introduce us to who Jerusha is a BSN and a USRN, a registered nurse. She holds a BSN degree from the University of Nairobi and holds a master's in public health from the University of Washington. Jerusha has over 3 years of experience as a hiring manager for several projects at the Kenyatta National Hospital research programs. She is currently a PhD candidate at the School of Nursing Sciences in the University of Washington and works with Passcode Global Consultants as the career development consultant. One thing I want you to know is that Jerusha also took her NCLEX program and passed with Passcode. And so today, Jerusha will be taking us through the development of an internationally aligned resume or CV. So without further ado, allow me to welcome Jerusha. If you can hear me, karibu sana.
Thank you, Garura. And thank you, Passcode, for having me join today. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, loud and clear.
I'll try share my screen before I can start off. You able to see my screen?
Very clear, visible from our ends.
Okay, thank you. Just to confirm, is it a full screen? I can't tell from my side.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you, Passcode, for having me come and be able to talk to everyone today. And I would like to thank you everyone for joining and being able to get the information. Just before I begin, I would like to highlight that I also got to know about Passcode through a webinar and was able to do my NCLEX while I was still in school. So This is to encourage you and to let you know it's doable even when you're very busy. You're able to, if you're serious, you're able to balance your time and be able to take your exams. So that is, it's tough, but it's doable. Okay, so today we are going to talk about creating a standout resume. I know from the announcement, we talked about creating a CV, and sometimes you talk about a CV versus a resume. We are not sure what is what stands for what do you need to submit? Should you send a CV? Should you send a resume? At what point can you choose to do what? So today we are going to discuss differences between the two, and for the purposes of the discussion that I had with Humphrey, we are going to talk about a resume. This is in respect to applying for jobs, and when you're talking about preparing for your NCLEX, you're looking for a potential person to either be your sponsor, or you're looking for a job as a nurse or any other institution. I'm trying to progress, I think. Okay. Okay, so it's important to note that hiring managers have a lot of CVs to review, and with this, they have limited amount of time to spend on looking at resumes that are shared or your CVs. So it takes approximately 6 to 15 seconds for someone to look at a candidate and say, this goes to the yes pile, we're going to review it later, or this is being discarded. So you have to make sure that you have a CV that is captivating, so that when someone looks at it, they're like, this is the person we want, let's go ahead and take them. Additionally, it's been highlighted that most of the CVs are disqualified due to typo or grammatical mistakes. So I would recommend that you proofread your resume, proofread it once, and then proofread it again. Sometimes it's boring to read what you've already written. So I usually read it aloud to myself so that I can pick up the mistakes rather than doing the normal reading that you're reading to your heart. %35% of CVs have been disqualified due to unprofessional emails. And there are so many emails that people use out there. Someone can say munchkin@gmail.com, my love at something. Such emails are considered to be unprofessional. It's recommended that when you develop an email, you use either initials of your word, your name, or you can use your first name to make it more professional. So we're going to discuss the differences between a CV and a resume. So generally, a curriculum vitae or a CV is a document used for academic and research positions. It includes a full list of publications, presentations, awards that you've gotten, and it's almost exclusively used to pursue an academic career. It does not also have a page limit. On the other side, a resume is a document used to demonstrate your experiences, your strengths, and your skills, and how they fit for a particular opportunity. The goal of a resume is to get you an interview. The resume is mostly used in business and industry positions. Usually it has a page limit. Mostly it's 1 page, but if you're a professional who has worked for more than 10 years, you can use a maximum of 2 pages. It is expected that you summarize your relevant experiences and your education in these 2 pages. So today we are going to talk about your resume. We will cover the content and the format of your resume. So we'll start with the content. In terms of the content, the most important things that you should have is your contact information, your education, and your experience. The information that you include is mostly dependent on what you're applying for. You have to consider what is most relevant for your qualifications. That is your education, your experiences, your academic activities or projects, extracurricular activities that you're involved in, and leadership positions that you held. Employers want to know if what you're doing or what you haven't done, so that they can see if you're a better fit for the position that they've advertised. And when you are including this important information, you have to remember that you include what you have been paid for and also what you haven't been paid for. It reflects on how you've spent your time and how you built your skills over the years. So now we'll start with the contact information. So for the contact information, we have the required versus the optional. The required information is your name, your contact details, that is your phone number and your professional email. The optional information that you need is your full address, which includes your city and country. This is dependent on the job that you are applying for, especially if it's an international job or they require someone who resides in a specific place. Then you have to specify your full address. Some of them you can include your LinkedIn profile or any other online portfolio that you have. This is an example of contact information that you can use. You can either, the first one includes the full details, especially if like you're in the Kenyan context, you're applying for a job. These are the expectations of how you can have your contact information. For the second one, I used an option of an international version whereby you have the city and the state, and then you have a postal code, and then you include your phone and then the email. So one thing I have to highlight about your contact information, you have to be careful since there are many scammers. Don't give your full contact information. Don't give the exact address of where you're living. If you have like a house number or if you have like a specific building that pinpoints where you live, you would rather leave that one out. And also would recommend that you do not include your national ID in your contact information. These are like specific things that we are used to including, but being that someone can actually use your national ID details for other items, I would recommend that you leave them out. Next, we're going to discuss the education. So for this section, include your institution name, the city and the country, and the degree it was intended for. Also include the graduation date if you've already graduated, and if you haven't graduated, you include an expected graduation date. This is an example of some of the details that you can include. What you're targeting is to be very pithy with the words that you're using. You don't want it to be running over. You just want it to, you use your space efficiently. So you just highlight the name, the university where it was, and the year. For this one, you'll notice I left out the country. Sometimes you can include the country, but it depends if it's local universities and you're applying within the same country, you don't need to include where the universities are or where the schools are. But if it's international, I would recommend including where they are. And then you'll notice I used the end dates of the programs. This is just to save on space, because if you can write the beginning to the end, it's gonna like spill over to the next. So you try and probably use a completed date rather than the full information. The other thing I can highlight, do not list the subjects that you qualified for, because you're gonna take a lot of space, remembering that you only have a bandwidth of 2 pages. So just list what is very important. If you have short courses and you've taken like more than 10 courses, do not list them here. The next part we're going to discuss is your experience. And this is one of the most important things, because you're trying to fit in with the role that has been advertised. So the first thing is you have to highlight in reverse chronological order. I'm going to show you an example of how that looks. You highlight the title of the position that you had, the organization that you worked with, the location and the date ranges that you worked with them. And in a very pithy manner, describe what you did for that organization. These experiences can be paid or unpaid, but you always have to include the description of what you did. So these are two examples of experiences that you can include. Remember that you always summarize. So we have the position, have where you worked. This was like a nursing officer at Kenyatta National Hospital. Where was this? This was in Nairobi, Kenya. And then these are the date durations, and then your duties and responsibilities. So you see this one is 2014 to 2018, and this is 2013 to 2014. So you're starting from the old one, old dates coming up. And then you realize we are talking about the past. So the adjectives that you're using: developed and implemented nursing policies and procedures. This is when you're talking about things that you already done. So assuming it's your current position, that's when you talk about the current. What are you doing currently? You're developing and implementing nursing policies and procedures. So you have to emphasize on, is it the past tense that you're talking about, or you're talking about the current position that you're having? So now we'll focus on the format. So as I had told you earlier, resumes are usually one page. If it's a professional, someone who has a professional experience, more than 5 to 10 years, you include 2 pages. We talk about the font size, have a font size of between 11 and 12 points, and have margins between 0.5 to 1. And this can easily be found at the layout of the Word document. It has like on top, it has several sections. There's a layout sections, and that's where you can select your margins. Use white space on your resume so that it doesn't look crowded and doesn't have a lot of text. I'm going to show an example of how to use white space to be able to captivate someone who reads your resume. And then for those who will be applying for international positions, I just want to highlight that it's common practice that you do not include references in your resume. It's usually included either as an additional copy of referees, or they usually give you like an extra step to fill in the references. However, if you're planning to use it in the Kenyan context to apply for a job, I would recommend to have a referees page just after, and let it be on its standalone page. And then remember to proofread for any typo or grammatical errors. As you remember, 77% of the people are kind of like shut out because of the typos and grammar errors. So remember to be consistent and proofread your CVs. So this is an example of a reference that you can use. So you can write a short summary highlighting the referees that can be contacted. So you can say something like, please feel free to contact the undermentioned regarding my competence, work ethics, and performance, or any other aspects that concerns me. And then you write the first and the last name of the person, the title of this person, and then the institution or the organization that they're working in. Remember to include their phone numbers and their emails. If this is someone who maybe travels a lot and uses WhatsApp, you can also include on the side their WhatsApp number. And remember, before you include someone as your referee, remember to ask them for permission, to let them know that you've applied for a position and that they should expect to receive a call. Especially for international jobs, they will always call your referees. I would also recommend that when you're having your referees, have your immediate supervisor be included, because if you don't, they'll either ask you to give their details, or they start to question why you're not including someone that you've been working with as your referee. Try and include someone that you've been interacted with within the past 5 years. So this will be a professional referee. You'll have an academic referee for anything regarding school, and you'll also have an additional referee who probably can talk about your career progression or your social life. And remember, do not include your relatives as your referees. It's unprofessional. So now we are going to discuss about things you would want to avoid when you're working on your resumes. There are many things, but I've just included a few, and then we can discuss others if you have any questions. So two of the things that are most important is first using generic cliches. For example, if you're talking about your skills and you're saying you're passionate, you're motivated, you're dedicated, these are cliches and you can easily pick them up from anywhere, and you cannot verify such words, and unless I've worked with you, I cannot really verify that you're motivated or you're passionate. So we would recommend that you avoid such. And then typographical and grammatical errors are other things to avoid. Avoid having a one-size-fits-all resume, that when you see an advertised job, you just pick whatever you had worked on and put it in. Try and read through your advertised job and pick up the keywords and customize your CV to fit in the advertised job. The other thing I would highlight is exaggerating the truth. Always try and tell the truth, always. If you tell a lie and you get the job, the truth will always catch up with you. Lying is so hard and it's so difficult, so I would recommend to always tell the truth, and also work on your formatting so that it looks beautiful. So now I'm going to share a nice example that I found online. And when I talk about white spaces, there is a lot of space up here. There is space, there is a lot of space. It captivates your eyes and you want to look at this person and see what they've done. So this is a nice example that you can use. I've included links down here that you can use. What I would recommend is moving the education from down here to having it on top. You can have it after the professional summary and have your education here. And then I like the fact that when they had like the skills, they had them in point form. This is what you're looking for, having everything in point form. Okay, so now I'll welcome any questions from the team. In the meantime, I can respond. I've seen a few questions directed to me and I can respond to them.
Sure. Okay.
So I'll start with Gilbert's question. How do I know that I'm supposed to use my resume and not my CV when applying for a job? So just as I had highlighted before, and I want to share my screen shortly. Let me see if I'm able to share. Let me see. Okay. I should be able to share my screen. Okay. As I had highlighted before, when you're talking about a CV versus a resume, if you are applying for a job, then what you're looking towards sending out is your CV. This is because for any job that is advertised, you'll get at least 250 people usually apply for that job. If it's advertised out there, it's in the media and people have seen it. So the hiring manager has to review so many CVs and resumes. And if you have like 5 to 6, 7 pages of CV that you're highlighting all like your career progression objectives, and also you're highlighting your positions, and you've written your publications, sometimes they usually trash it out. And you realize that especially now with the progression in technology, more than 80% of hiring managers actually have software that churns out the CVs and they look for specific keywords. And that is how you're not shortlisted. So if you're looking for a job, I would recommend you use a resume. And that means try and limit your application, the whole paperwork, to 2 pages. So that means you're only including the most important things in your resume. if you're applying for an academic position, like in schools, you want to be a teacher, you want to be a faculty, a lecturer, then you would go for a CV, because now that gives you like more space to write other things, such as your publications and your presentation. That is what I would say. And then the other question was from Conrad. He highlights that I used a generic sample. What do you recommend as a substitute? I deliberately used the CV, the example that I used was deliberate. And this is because I would like you to think about what you want to highlight for your CV. One of the skills that I would recommend acquiring, especially if you're planning to come to the US and be able to be at par with the job market, is to write your own CV, or at least ask for assistance for someone to write and teach yourself how to write your own CV, because most of their jobs are customized on specifics, and they want you to be able to customize your resume to the specifics. That is why I used this. This example was only to highlight the design when you're designing, so that you have a lot of white spaces. You reduce the amount of words that you're including. That is where I used this. Then when you're talking about your professional summary, this is where you talk about yourself. How do you describe yourself? What is your passion as a nurse? Let's say you're working in the emergency department. That is where you write about yourself. You can easily find samples of how to write a professional summary as a nurse in the internet, and then use that one to customize. That is why I want to give you an example, so that everyone, for all the 56 people we have here, they're going to have the same professional summary. Someone is gonna realize you guys are having the same. So try, go out there, Google, and find examples, and then customize them to fit you, what you want. And then something to do with the summary of qualifications, I will get rid of this. I'll have the professional summary. I have my education next. You talk about your skills. And when you talk about your skills, you have your communication skills, especially if you're talking about your clinical skills, such as assessment of patients, monitoring vital signs, administering drugs, critical thinking skills. You're able to make sound decisions based on patient data, medical history, or treatment plans. We talk about attention to details and say you have a keen eye to monitor patients' condition and administer medications, problem-solving skills. Those are like what I'm looking towards when you're talking about your skills. And then your work history, this is really customized to what you're doing, because this example is, you see it's for someone who's working as a teacher, and we are nurses. So you're gonna have like either an ER nurse, a medical surgical nurse, or an ICU nurse, a pediatric nurse, or something of such. So I don't know if there's any other question, someone can raise their hands. And I would also want to respond to Victoria. She talked about clarify, Pascal, please clarify this to me. How true is it that some areas in the US, such as Texas, New York, etc., if you pass your NCLEX exam, you can be offered a job as a nurse without an English language? I want to respond to this because this was my experience, but you have to be sure of what they usually ask. I kind of prepared for my NCLEX with the passcode, and I didn't take the English exam. Normally, they do offer a waiver. However, they only offer a waiver if you have been in the US and you've been in a high-income country and you've studied for at least 1 year in either the US or the UK for at least 1 year, and you have transcripts or evidence showing that you studied in that region, so that they count. They usually count a number of hours. It's usually, I think, 1,600 hours. That is when you get a waiver. However, unfortunately, currently, even though we are being taught in English in Kenya, we have the high school diploma, and we also have the nursing that is taught in English. They do not really recognize that. So you still need to do your English exam. And I would recommend just doing it, because sometimes you'll go through all the processes and then at the tail end of it, they still have you do it. And doing it on this side, like in the US, is more expensive than if you're doing it from Kenya. Thank you. I don't know if there are any other questions for me. June, I think I've already responded to your question. Other words that you can use, as I had said, you can use words like your communication skills and just to write a summary, clinical skills, critical thinking skills, adaptability, the technical skills you have, especially if you're working like in a specialized area. You can talk about your technical skills. You can talk about your time management and how you're able to offer appropriate care within the timely manner. That's it from me. Thank you.